Hey there, viewers. The courtroom went completely silent when one victim took the stand and spoke those words. Oprah was at Diddy's parties. She knew everything. The weight of that statement hit the room like a shockwave, and now everything is under question. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. She didn't graduate. She was gifted. I don't know how much of this they'll let into the record. They told me it's sealed, said what I'm saying is for internal use only, that it wouldn't leave the room, that I wouldn't be named. That's the only reason I'm talking. I've stayed quiet for years, not because I wanted to, but because when you work at a place like that, when you wear the badge and the lanyard and repeat their slogans out loud enough times, you start believing silence is a kind of safety, and breaking that silence feels like tearing skin. I worked at Leg for 3 years. Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls, just outside of Johannesburg. I wasn't a teacher. I wasn't anything important. I handled transportation and external placements. You know, the programs for girls who did well, really well, and got chances abroad. Partnerships, internships, special showcases. I arranged their flights, their visas, handled their calls home. It was supposed to be a good thing, and it was, most of the time. But not with her. Not with Namsa. She came in like they all did. Uniform crisp, hair in neat braids, eyes wide but tired. I remember thinking she was too quiet even for a new girl, but she learned fast. She listened. She adapted. The kind of girl who made staff look good without even trying. We have a word for it back home. Clever, but not in the usual sense. I mean it like she could read rooms, perform emotions, pause just the right amount before answering, smile in just the right way. She rose through the ranks in record time, top marks, extra classes, volunteer work. 1 year in, her name was already getting circled by certain people above my level, people who only showed up in black SUVs, who wore suits too clean for dust roads. They called it early release, but it wasn't that. It wasn't graduation. Namsa was only 15. They called me into the admin wing one morning, handed me her travel documents. New name, new ID, new passport photo, one where she didn't smile. They said she'd been selected for the International Performance Curation Program, that she'd be flying to New York, staying at a private estate owned by a patron, that I should make sure her file reflected graduation status with high distinction, and that all other digital records be pulled from internal archive. It didn't sit right with me. There was no such program listed anywhere on our international partners sheet, and curation wasn't a word we used. We trained leaders, speakers, scientists, not performers, not girls who disappeared into mansions with nothing but a script. I asked if I could say goodbye to her. They said no. A week later, her dorm was cleared out. Not a trace. Her bed was made with military precision. Even her nameplate was gone from the door. And that was it. She was gone. I might have let it go if I hadn't seen the sketchbook. We weren't supposed to keep the girl's art. Most of it got sent home or destroyed at the end of term for privacy. But one of the housekeeping staff handed it to me in secret. Said they found it tucked behind a ceiling panel in the dorm bathroom. It was cloth-bound, hand-stitched with little beads along the edge. Namsa's name was etched inside the front cover in pencil, faint, like she was scared to press too hard. The drawings inside. They weren't like the others. No bright colors, no sunrises or village homes. Just page after page of chairs, stages, curtains, girls standing under spotlights with blindfolds, spirals drawn over faces, and one image that stopped me cold. Namsa sitting between two people, one clearly Oprah, the other clearly Diddy. I know how they looked. Everyone who worked there did. We were shown enough footage, enough event coverage, enough photographs. But this sketch, it wasn't posed like a celebration or photo op. They were holding scripts in their laps, thick ones, The covers said Cycle 5 in jagged handwriting, and Namsa in the middle was staring straight ahead, eyes wide, hands on her knees like she was waiting for a cue. Nodded to the head of curriculum. She said it was probably a fantasy drawing, that Namsa was imaginative, that sometimes high-achieving girls blur the line between reality and ambition. She took the sketchbook, said she'd file it somewhere safe. 2 days later, that staff member resigned, moved to Canada. A few months passed. I stopped asking questions. I started telling myself that Namsa was doing fine, that she was thriving somewhere. But something gnawed at me, especially when I'd see a name get removed from the internal system without any ceremony, a redacted line, a blank photo. And sometimes, I'd recognized those names, girls I'd seen laughing in the halls, girls who never got graduation ceremonies, girls who just vanished. There was one moment I'll never forget. Year 2. I was updating digital portfolios when the internal drive crashed. When it came back online, every photo folder had been renamed. One caught my eye, Performance Assets. Inside were 10 headshots. I recognized 5 of them. Namsa's was the last. No label, just her image, sharpened around the edges, eyes looking off to the side like she wasn't supposed to know the camera was there. When I clicked it, the file opened in some kind of media viewer I'd never seen before. The image flickered, and then her voice played. I didn't apply. I was chosen, not for what I knew, but for how I remembered. Then static, then nothing. I closed the file and reopened it. Gone. After that, I stopped digging. I did my job, smiled more, nodded when told. But every time a girl was fast-tracked, I'd get this sickness in my stomach, like I was walking her to a gate she'd never come back through. You asked me to talk about Namsa, but she's just one of many. The only reason I remember her so clearly is because she wasn't the best. She was the most useful. The kind of girl who could be made into anything, like soft clay. And that's what they wanted. Not minds, not leaders, just pliable memory, clean slates. You said this won't go public. I hope it doesn't, not because I want to protect anyone, but because if the wrong people find out I spoke, I'll disappear too. Just like Namsa. She didn't graduate, she was gifted. She wasn't scouted, she was cast, the guest list was sealed. I didn't think they'd ever call me in. I figured I was too low on the ladder to matter, just an assistant, clipboard girl, bag holder, the one who makes sure the champagne trays have the right napkin color and that the food trucks park behind the tent instead of next to it. But I guess someone finally opened the file. The one I tried to forget about, the one labeled Private Estate, Feb 22, non-standard rotation. Back then, I worked under a top-tier celebrity planner. I'll leave her name out. She's still out there, doing Met Galas and private islands and birthday weekends for people whose shoes cost more than my rent. But she had this one client, unnamed on the paperwork, always. But we knew. Everyone knew. The staff called it the Crown Rotation. It meant Diddy. And when it meant Diddy, it also meant no phones, no plus-owns, and no mistake. The events weren't held in hotels or clubs. They were always at this private estate outside LA, way out past the hills. No address, just GPS coordinates that changed every few months. You had to pass 3 layers of gates. Armed guys, the real kind, not just earpiece and sunglasses type. Then you'd be met by a woman in a white suit. Always a woman. Always white. She'd hand you a folder and say, "Sign this, now." The NDAs were thicker than textbooks. Most people signed without reading. Some hesitated. Those people didn't make it past the driveway. Once inside, it was like a film set, but not the glossy kind, more like a warehouse that someone tried to turn into a palace. Velvet drapes over concrete, stage lights rigged into trees, rooms labeled with signs like Reflection Room 1 and Performance Conditioning. I thought it was some kind of immersive art thing. I'd worked Fashion Week stunts before, but this had a different smell. Like bleach, perfume, and something burnt beneath it all. Phones were taken at the door, locked in soft pouches. We had numbers written on our wrists so the security team could call us using radios. If a guest wanted to reset, we had to guide them to the decompression lounge. That was code for whatever room they needed to sit in until their pupils stopped dilating. My job that night was crowd logistics, making sure nobody wandered where they weren't supposed to, helping VIPs find the mirrors. That's what the booths were called, mirror rehearsal booths. They were these silver-paneled cubes placed along the west wing. Inside, soft lighting, a chair, a full-wall mirror, and speakers. What played inside? I don't know. I was told to knock if the light turned red and escort whoever came out directly to the velvet corridor. There was one girl I'll never forget. She couldn't have been more than 16, dressed like the others, too much makeup, too many sequins, heels too high for comfort. She came out of the mirror booth shaking. I offered her water, but she didn't take it. Just looked past me, eyes wide. "It's the school lady," she whispered. I asked her what she meant. She pointed toward the far end of the corridor where a circle of guests sat on velvet chairs. In the center was Diddy, laughing at something one of the men said, and to his right, sitting very still, not speaking, was Oprah. Her hands folded in her lap, her expression completely unreadable. The girl stared and said again, this time louder, "I know her. That's the school lady." I tried to calm her down, but security noticed. Within seconds, 2 men came and led her away, gently but firmly. I never saw her again. Later that night, I wandered into the control room. I wasn't supposed to be in there, but I had to deliver something. Can't remember what. Maybe a schedule update, maybe a tray. Doesn't matter. What I saw is what stayed. There was a whiteboard mounted behind the main monitor wall. On it, written in red marker, were rows of names and numbers. Each line had a time slot, a name, and a booth number. Next to some of the names were small symbols, spirals, stars, triangles, and at the top, underlined twice, it read, "Performance rotation, approved by O." I stood there staring for a few seconds too long. One of the tech guys noticed, told me to leave, said, "You don't want to memorize things here." That phrase stuck with me. Not see things, not know things, memorize. Like knowing wasn't the danger, remembering was. After the event, we were debriefed. Told that some participants may contact us in distress and that we were to redirect them to the general hotline. Never to answer personal questions, never to confirm attendance. They burned the guest list in front of us. Literally lit it on fire in a silver bowl. I stayed in the industry for another year after that, but nothing ever felt right again. Every party seemed too loud, every smile too practiced, every mirror felt like a warning. I told myself I didn't see what I saw, that Oprah probably just showed up to support, that maybe the girl was mistaken. But the way she said it, "That's the school lady," wasn't scared. It was betrayed. Like someone who thought they were safe until they weren't. Now you're asking for testimony, and all I can say is this. There were events that weren't on the books, girls who weren't on the list, rooms that weren't in the floor plan. But Oprah, she was always in the circle, never laughing, never leading, just watching. And on that whiteboard, her letter wasn't scribbled in by accident. It was centered. It was circled. Approved by O. Chapter 3, Reflection Compliant. I've worked in 3 different hospitals and 2 private recovery centers, but I'll never forget that girl, not because of what she looked like, or even because of what she said. I remember her because of the way the room felt different when she was in it, like the air wasn't sitting right. like even the light bulbs knew something wasn't supposed to be happening. It was one of those quiet overnight shifts at the facility, Ridgeview Hills, a place for VIPs to recover privately, which meant detox, psych holds, or cleanup before press cycles, the kind of place where names don't go on charts and patient files live in locked drawers. They called me in for room 7 just after midnight. The intake was handled privately, not through the front desk. A girl had been dropped off by unmarked transport, paperwork signed under the name Nbabe with an allergy form listing memory suppressants. When I walked into the room, she was sitting up in the hospital bed, knees to chest, IV already running, eyes wide and not blinking enough. She was maybe 16, 17 if you pushed it. Black dress, torn near the hem, glitter smeared across her arms like she'd rubbed her hands over her face in a panic. Her makeup had melted down into something close to war paint. Her fingers were stained with charcoal or ash, not blood, just darkness. She looked up at me but didn't focus. Her mouth was moving, but the words came like broken glass. Red door. Mirror spiral. No faces. She watched. She was right there. I tried to calm her. Said my name, said she was safe, asked if she could tell me where she'd been. She started laughing, quiet at first, then loud and sudden. Not like a joke laugh, like someone who just remembered something they wish they hadn't. The attending physician, Dr. Rosenthal, told me she'd likely been exposed to a sedative hallucinogen, possibly administered without her consent. He said not to ask questions, just keep her monitored, give her fluids, and write down anything she said, verbatim. By morning, she had filled 2 entire sketch pads with drawings. I hadn't even noticed her pull them from under the bed. Pages and pages of spirals, stairs that led to nowhere, and chairs, empty chairs, lined up on a black stage. Some of the chairs had blindfolds hanging over them. Others were stacked into pyramids, and on almost every page, in the corner, a figure sat in shadow. At first, it looked like a shape, but then you'd see the outline of the hair, the poise, the rounded features. One sketch stopped me cold. It was a face, nearly complete, but charcoal smudged across the eyes. Beneath it, in tiny letters, she rehearsed the silence. That's when I looked at the IV tag. Her folder had no birth date, no diagnosis code, just a single stamp, neat and clean in the bottom right corner. Ruck 7. At first, I thought it was a blood type or code for her care level, but one of the older nurses caught me staring. She whispered, "Reflection compliant, tier 7. I asked what that meant. She didn't answer, just walked away. Quit the same night. I didn't sleep the next day. I couldn't. I kept seeing the girl's eyes, the way they darted toward the door whenever footsteps echoed down the hall, like she expected someone to come for her, like this wasn't the first time she'd woken up somewhere unknown with her memories dripping out her ears. On my next shift, her room was empty. Bed made, chart gone. I asked what happened. Dr. Rosenthal said the patient had been relocated per request. No further details. But the sketches were still there, stuffed into the trash can like they meant nothing. I pulled them out, took photos of some. There was one image, one I didn't see before, where the girl had drawn herself on stage, arms out, mouth open in a scream. In the crowd, dozens of faces blurred by thick charcoal, but in the front row, perfectly outlined, sat a woman in a velvet suit, hands folded, calm, watching. The face was unmistakable. Oprah. Handed that one in to the admin team, said I found it under the bed. They took it and said nothing, not even a thank you. That was my last shift. I quit the next morning, packed a duffel bag, and didn't tell anyone where I was going. Something about that room, that girl, that folder. It all felt wrong, like I had brushed against something that wasn't meant to be touched. 1 week later, I saw the news. Small fire at Ridgeview Hills contained to the west wing. Official reports said it was an electrical issue. But that wing, that's where room 7 was. And the girl, there was no record she was ever there. No intake log, no insurance file, no transport form. It was like she burned away with the fire, memory and all. But I remember the way she whispered. Remember the sketch of the spiral. I remember the initials stamped in the corner of her chart. RC7, reflection, compliant. Tier 7, Chapter 4, the VHS tape was never submitted. I've worked in evidence processing for almost 9 years now. I've cataloged everything from cartel ledgers to homemade pipe bomb diagrams to 6-hour security tapes that show nothing but a man pacing in his kitchen. I've seen things that made me sick, that made me angry, but I've never seen something that made me feel like my memory didn't belong to me anymore. Not until that box. It was delivered by hand to the basement evidence intake, marked as part of the Diddy property seizure, batch E5 EB-K. That batch was mostly junk, broken speaker systems, old laptops, USB drives with corrupted indexes, Polaroids that looked more like after-party nonsense than criminal evidence. But then came the box. It wasn't labeled like the rest. No barcodes, no chain of custody seals, just a handwritten phrase in red marker across the top flap. Cycle 5, Confessions. No one could tell me where it came from. There was no intake slip. The transport team said it was on the manifest, but not assigned to any specific handler. I opened it alone. Shouldn't have, but I did. Inside were several sealed sketchbooks, legal evidence markings from an unrelated case out of Johannesburg, dated almost a decade ago. Each one had names scratched out. One was labeled NB, another K, Mthenbu, and another simply read Tier 6. The pages were mostly drawings, chairs, spirals, mirrors. Every page was black and white except for one, just one, done in soft gold pastel. It showed a figure seated on a throne, face featureless, arms draped in a heavy robe. Behind her stood another figure, tall, masculine, blurred with shadow. In front of them a child knelt. Underneath the sketch, final performance, witnessed by the Crown. At the bottom of the box was a VHS tape. No case, just the cassette, scratched up with a red sticker on the front. 3 words scrawled over the label. Do not play. Of course I played it. The media room still has an old VHS reader we keep for legacy evidence. I loaded the tape, heart pounding harder than I'd admit. The footage opened with static, then stabilized to reveal a party. Indoors, dimly lit and full of movement. Dancers in gowns, men in tailored suits. The camera wasn't hidden, it was drifting, slow and intentional, as if part of the party itself. Then the frame stopped, hovered. She was there, Oprah, sitting on a red velvet throne near the back wall, surrounded by candles. Her gown was gold. Her expression wasn't neutral. It was something else. Focused, intense, like she wasn't just attending the event, she was measuring it. The voiceover began soon after. It wasn't hers, it was Diddy's, raspy, casual, but too quiet to understand. He was narrating something, like a monologue laid over the party. Every once in a while his voice would break into laughter or change pitch abruptly, like a bad edit. It didn't match the energy of the room. But behind the audio, something else started playing. A girl's voice, soft, warped. It echoed like it was recorded inside a metal tunnel. She was there. She knew. She rehearsed the silence. The party kept playing looped frames, it looked like. The same man spilling champagne, the same girl adjusting her dress. Then the camera slowly tilted up toward Oprah's throne. The moment the lens centered on her, the tape distorted, hard, The screen glitched into spirals, flashes of red light and single frames of something else. Not the party, the stage, the mirror. A row of girls in uniform, all facing away from the camera, arms raised as if mid-performance. She was there, the voice whispered again. She rehearsed the silence. I stopped the tape, rewound it. The second time through, more frames showed. Quick, harsh cuts between the party and what looked like a rehearsal room. One frame, less than a second, showed a girl curled on the floor, her hands covering her ears. On the wall behind her, a mirror. And in the mirror, a reflection of someone watching. Same velvet suit. Same hands folded in the lap. Same unreadable face. I flagged the tape for review, logged it under Evid No 41 F1S potential witness identification. I created a backup record, requested transcript support, and forwarded a report upstairs. 3 days later, I went back to pull the tape for the transcription team. It was gone. The box was still there, the sketchbook still sealed, but the tape? Nowhere in the drawer, no checkout record, no overwrite slip, just a blank space and a sticker that had been peeled off. I filed a discrepancy report like I'm supposed to, got an automated reply, "Thank you for your diligence, this matter has been escalated." But the file I created in the database, it had been renamed. Instead of Evid No 41, int, it now read, "Playback reviewed. Archive not required." I tried pulling the playback footage from the room's internal security system, but every time I open the timestamp, every time I get a screen that says, "Reflex compliant, cycle 5 complete." I know what I saw. I know who was in that room. I know what her face looked like in that moment. Not the public smile, not the hand on the shoulder Oprah they show in classrooms. I saw her in stillness. I saw her watching. And I heard that girl. She wasn't panicked, she wasn't hysterical. She was just remembering. She was there. She knew. She rehearsed the silence. And now, the tape is gone. Like she never said it at all. Chapter 5, they called it gifting season. I don't know what you expect me to say that will make this make sense to anyone who hasn't lived it. I've gone over it 1,000 times in my head, wondering how to start, how to make it sound real. But the truth is, it doesn't sound real. Not even to me. I wish it weren't. I'm 22 now. My name isn't important. You've blurred my face, altered my voice, made sure no one can trace this back. But the memories, they still belong to me. They live in my bones, and I've carried them for almost 10 years. I was taken when I was 13, not snatched off the street or dragged from my bed. It was official, organized, signed and stamped by people in suits with calm voices. I was told it was a talent program, an international opportunity for girls with exceptional potential. It was through OWLAG, Oprah's school. I'd been there for 2 years. I wasn't the top student, but I worked hard, kept my head down, didn't ask too many questions. That's what they liked. They said the program was based in New York, that I'd be going to a non-profit that focused on creative expression and cultural ambassadorship. Big words that meant nothing to me at the time. All I knew was that I'd be flying alone, and when I asked about my mother, they told me she'd been informed. She hadn't. The plane ticket was one way. When I landed, it wasn't a campus. It wasn't even a school. It was a mansion in upstate New York, surrounded by trees and silence. Inside, marble floors and black glass doors. No classrooms. No teachers, just women in gray dresses who never gave their names. I was taken to a room with no windows, handed a silk robe, and told I'd begin rehearsals the next day. That was the first time I heard the phrase, gifting season. They said it like a celebration, like a holiday, like we should be proud. There were other girls there. Some I recognized from school, others I didn't. All of us were between 12 and 15. All of us were told to smile. All of us were told we were chosen. The rehearsals weren't what you think. No dancing, no singing. We were taught how to walk, how to pose, how to speak without saying anything. We were filmed doing mock interviews, reading scripts with blank spaces where names should have been, and every so often, someone would come in with a clipboard and make notes as we stood still in front of the mirror. One night, I was told I'd been approved. They braided my hair, dressed me in red satin, and drove me to a private estate in Los Angeles. That was the night I met him. Diddy didn't look at me like a person. He looked at me like I was a package. A product, something new, something unwrapped. They didn't call me by my name. They called me Gift 4. I was told to stay quiet, keep eye contact, and let the hosts guide me. That's how they put it. I remember the music, the flashing lights, the way the air felt thick and electric, like something terrible was hiding in the walls. But I remember one moment most of all. I saw her, Oprah. She walked into the room like she belonged there, like she owned the air. People moved for her, made space, smiled too wide. She came over to me, looked me straight in the eyes, and she hugged me. She smelled like perfume and heat. And as she pulled away, she said something I'll never forget. "You're so brave. Just remember, silence rehearses strength." At the time, I didn't understand. I thought she was comforting me, that maybe she didn't know what was happening behind those doors, that maybe she thought she was protecting us. But I know better now, because 10 minutes after that hug, I was taken behind the red curtain. It was thick velvet. It separated the lounge from the performance corridor. That's what they called it. Like it was a stage. Like we were walking into something we'd rehearsed for all our lives without knowing it. The corridor was lined with mirrors, but they weren't normal. They were two ways. On the other side, people watched. We were told to walk slowly, to smile, to stop at marked spots on the floor. I did what I was told. I didn't cry until it was over. I don't remember what happened in the room at the end. Not all of it, just flashes. A hand on my shoulder, a camera flash, a voice whispering, "She's a fast learner." When it was over, I was given pills, told they were vitamins. My vision blurred. I slept for 2 days. When I woke up, my clothes were gone. My old name tag was gone, and so was any idea of who I used to be. I stayed in that house for another 3 months. I don't know how many more parties happened. I only know the term stuck. Gifting season. The time of year when the chosen girls were delivered. When silence was trained into our bodies and memory was blurred on purpose. They told us we were building strength. But strength, it turns out, is what they feared most. Because here I am, breaking it, saying it out loud. A court, with my face hidden and my voice filtered, but my truth clear. She hugged me. She looked me in the eye, and she said it right before the curtain closed behind me. Silence rehearses strength. Now, silence was their shield, and mine is finally broken. Chapter 6. The sketchbooks matched. I'm not a cop. I'm not an investigator. I don't even work for the government full-time. I'm just a digital contractor. One of those people you bring in when your own team doesn't want to dig through 10 terabytes of garbage. I mostly deal in archival scans, cleanup, metadata syncing, quiet work, file work. I like it that way. You sit alone in a dark room with a good monitor and a bad coffee and just get it done. So when they hired me to help digitize seized records from Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls, I didn't blink. The contract was vague, but the pay was good. The job came through a federal vendor who said the material had to be processed off-site, under NDA, and with no third-party cloud interaction. That was standard for sensitive education materials. Or at least, that's what they told me. I got the shipment in 5 sealed crates, unmarked except for the case number, RAC5. Inside were hundreds of sketchbooks, stored in plastic sleeves. All of them came from girls between the ages of 11 and 17. Most of the covers had names, some were initials, a few were blank. The earliest dates went back over a decade. At first it felt normal, or at least what you'd expect from students that age: flowers, sunsets, portraits of family members. But then the patterns started. Spirals everywhere. Some were neat, some jagged, some took up whole pages, others were carved into the corners with ballpoint pens. Then came the mirrors. Girls staring into reflections that didn't match their faces, hands pressed against glass, phrases written in margins like, "Only one of us leaves." The glass rehearses me. She watches from the velvet. I thought it was just a weird theme, a trend maybe, but I flagged them anyway, like I was supposed to. Subject matter note, abstract trauma representation, I wrote. I'd been trained to use those words. Sanitize. Then I opened a sketchbook that made my stomach flip. The paper was thicker, the cover cloth wrapped, stained with something that looked like mold but smelled faintly of perfume. The name inside was written in pencil. Namza B. The first page was blank, but after that it spiraled fast. Chairs in a row, girls with bags over their heads, a woman in silhouette, always in the background, always holding something that looked like a script. One drawing showed a stage, a girl tied to a chair under a spotlight, mouth open like she was screaming. In the shadowed audience, faces blurred by charcoal. But one figure stood out. Upright posture, hair parted to the side, a thick script in one hand, the other resting in her lap. The caption under the sketch read, "Approved by O." My hands shook a little when I flipped the page. The next sketch showed a mirror, tall and curved like something out of a dressing room. A girl sat in front of it, but the reflection wasn't her. It was a woman, older, wearing the same uniform. On the bottom corner, reflection, compliant, tier 5. I stopped scanning for a while. Just sat there in the silence of that rented office space, with the hum of the hard drives behind me, staring at a pile of sketchbooks that now felt radioactive. I wanted to report it. Something inside me screamed too. But I didn't know who to call. My handler was just a project coordinator. She didn't ask questions. She just checked status logs and submitted hours. Still, I kept working. That's when I found the digital folder. It wasn't part of the hard drive index. I only found it because I ran a file recovery scan on a corrupted segment. It was buried under layers of deleted data. When I opened it, the folder name was Graduated Assets Cycle 5. Inside, high-resolution scans of specific sketchbook pages. Some were the exact images I'd just digitized. Others I hadn't seen before, but I recognized the style, the charcoal strokes, the repeating symbols, the veiled thrones, girls standing in rows, blindfolded, as lights came down on them like stage cues. But what chilled me most, what made me stop breathing, were the file names. Each one was a girl's name, followed by a tag. Transferred. Mirror ready. R6 confirmed. Gifted, delivered, spring rotation. These were labels, like product statuses, like they were never students at all. I started taking screenshots, lots of them. I opened up my private archive folder, started dragging files over to save. I knew it was risky, but something told me this wasn't going to last long. And I was right, because less than 3 minutes later the folder disappeared. I don't mean I deleted it or clicked the wrong button. I mean it vanished while I was inside it. The screens glitched. Just slightly. A flicker. And then the root directory reloaded. I scrambled to reopen the recovery tool. Nothing. I checked my local backup folder. Empty. I opened my own screenshot cache. Corrupted. All of them. Replaced with a single image. A white screen. A single black spiral. And the phrase, reflection compliant, access revoked. No signature, no metadata, no trace of the original folder. Shut everything down. Left the building, took the long way home, watching every car that trailed me for more than a block. I've seen a lot of things in this line of work. Hidden abuse logs, closed doors settlement letters, even off-the-record surveillance tapes. But this felt ancient, practiced, like someone rehearsed every moment I just lived and left a seat waiting for me in the back row. I'm not going back to that office, not for any paycheck. I left the drives, the crates, the sketchbooks, all of it. Because if I saw that one sketch again, the one with the girl on the stage and the woman in shadow holding the script, I don't think I'd be able to stop myself from looking up. And if I did, I know exactly who would be staring back. Chapter 7. She was never missing. She was memorized. I've been living out of motels for almost 4 weeks now. I told myself it would just be a weekend. Drive out, poke through a few sealed documents, piece together some rumors, then head back to the city. But every time I think I'm done, something else shows up. A new name, a new sketch, another girl who doesn't exist in any registry, but whose face shows up again and again in the corners of video stills and half-burnt files. Tonight, I'm in a dusty roadside room about 40 miles outside Bakersfield, the kind with paper-thin walls and a rusted soda machine humming loud enough to drown out your thoughts. I've got a corkboard pinned to the motel wall behind the bed, though corkboard is generous. It's really just a flattened box lid I nailed up with thumbtacks and hotel pens. On it, names and symbols, spirals, the same red door over and over again. But it's the photo that keeps drawing my eyes. Class of 2013, all ag, Oprah's school. I found it folded between the pages of an anonymous deposition binder. You can't mistake the girls' uniforms. Blue blazers, crisp pleated skirts, white button-ups that never wrinkle even in heat. All the girls are smiling except one. Not because she's not happy, because her face has been scribbled out. Thick black pen, pressed hard enough to tear the photo behind it. Someone didn't want her remembered. Or maybe someone wanted to erase what she remembered. I don't know why I noticed it the way I did. Something about the posture, the way her hands were folded, something about that face, even through the black ink, how it felt familiar. I didn't know it then, but I know now. That was Namsa. I've heard her name whispered in at least 3 different testimonies. She was fast-tracked, transferred, selected, never graduated, never documented again, until today. This morning, a padded envelope showed up in my motel mailbox. No return address, no postage, just slid in sometime while I was out getting gas. Inside was a USB drive, black, no branding, just a sticker on one side that read, Namsa Playbook Pen. It took me over an hour to decide whether to plug it in. I scanned it first. No malware, no obvious tracking software. The folder opened slowly, almost hesitantly, like it knew I wasn't ready. Inside, one video file. No title, no timestamp, just the icon, glowing faintly. I clicked. At first, it was just static. Then the frame settled. Namsa, older now, maybe 22, sitting on the floor of what looked like a dim hotel room, not much nicer than mine. Her hair was shorter. Her eyes were dry, but hollow, like she'd already cried it all out. She stared directly into the camera, not like she was performing, like she was remembering. She didn't say her name, didn't explain why she was recording, she just started talking. She told us stories Stories about rising, about finding our light, about believing we were more than what we were born into. And we believed her, because she smiled like our mothers and touched our shoulders like our grandmothers, and she told us we were safe. A pause, then her hand lifted slowly and pointed to the side of the frame. But they weren't stories, they were rehearsals. Every word, every mirror, every curtain, steps in a performance we didn't write. I leaned forward, my throat was dry. She watched us in the mirrors, not to protect us, not to guide us, to measure us. She needed to know which ones would survive the rotation, which ones would stay silent after the applause stopped. The screen flickered, the light in the room behind her dimmed just slightly. She was there, every time, not in the spotlight but in the wing. And she knew, she always knew. Namsa held up something then, a sketchbook. Same cloth edge, same beaded thread I'd seen described before. She opened it slowly and showed a page. It was the red curtain. Behind it, 3 girls stood barefoot, hands at their sides. In the audience sat only one figure, drawn in gold. She said my silence would make me strong. But I'm not strong. I'm just still here. The video cut to black. No credits, no metadata, just a flash of text so fast I almost missed it. Cycle 5 playback complete, reflection compliant. I sat there staring at the screen, my pulse so loud I couldn't hear the room anymore. That phrase again. It's everywhere, carved into sketchbooks, muttered by girls half-conscious in hospital beds, written on whiteboards in private mansions. Reflection compliant. It doesn't mean obedient, it doesn't mean cooperative, it means rehearsed, it means approved to perform the forgetting. Nominus wasn't missing. She wasn't hidden. She was processed, archived. Her memory wasn't buried, it was performed into silence. You know what this looks like? Conspiracy, madness, a bunch of scribbled drawings and corrupted videos. But when the same phrase shows up in 3 countries, on 5 devices, across a decade of hidden testimonies, you start to realize something bigger is humming beneath the surface. And right now, in this motel room, with the air conditioner rattling and that class photo staring me down from behind the bed, I realize the thing I've been chasing isn't evidence. It's memory. Their memory. Her memory. And now it's mine. She wasn't missing. She was memorized. Chapter 8. The spiral was her signature. The girl's voice shakes at first. You can hear the motel bathroom fan rattling above her, an uneven hum like something's caught in the blades. The recording begins with just the sound of her breath, slow and shallow, and the soft scrape of her pencil against the paper. Then she speaks. If you're watching this, I've already missed the checkout time. Don't worry, I left the door unlocked. I didn't want them to have to break it down. The camera is positioned on the bathroom sink, pointed toward the mirror. You can see her face in it at first, just a faint reflection through the steam, blurry and flickering under the dim yellow light. Her hair is wet, her eyes are too wide. She leans closer to the mirror and exhales. The glass fogs again. And then the symbols begin to show. They weren't there before. They weren't drawn with a marker or smeared on with ash. They appear slowly as the fog thickens, like heat revealing something hidden beneath the surface. Spirals, red doors, rows of velvet chairs. Each symbol curls into the next like handwriting from a fever dream. She watches them form as if they've done this before, as if they're remembering themselves. She taught us to forget, the girl whispers. That forgetting was the gift. That silence wasn't punishment. It was permission. Her hand comes into frame. It's shaking as she lifts something into view. A sketchbook. The final one? The fabric on the spine is torn. There's a burn mark across the corner. The first few pages are stuck together, but she doesn't open those. She flips to the last page and holds it up for the camera. A courtroom, drawn in charcoal, dense and smudged with weight. But it's not an ordinary courtroom. There are no jurors, no bailiff, no victims, just a single figure sitting in the judge's seat. Oprah, but not the smiling, spotlighted Oprah we all know. This version is blindfolded. Her hands are folded in her lap. Her mouth is drawn as a simple line, still, watching, or waiting. Below the image, in tight pencil, final performance, witnessed by the crown. The girl doesn't say anything for a few seconds, just stares at her drawing. Her breath starts to shake. "I thought if I could draw it, I could release it," she says, barely audible. "Like if I could name the spiral, I could break it. But the more I drew, the more it came back. The rehearsals, the mirror booths, the way they watched from behind the glass, waiting to see if we'd flinch." He places the sketchbook down gently. Then she turns the camera. We see her face clearly now. Her skin is pale, damp. Her eyes, they're bleeding, not dramatically, just soft, steady trails of red from the inner corners, like tears that have been waiting too long to fall. She doesn't wipe them away. She doesn't blink. She just stares into the lens and speaks. She said I was strong, that I had the kind of silence that could carry a generation. But I didn't stay silent. I remembered. A pause. Her mouth trembles. I drew everything. Her final words come like a closing curtain. Reflection compliant. Final performance approved. The screen glitches. Just once. Then cuts to black. No music. No fade out. Just silence. Then, the metadata on the video file begins to shift on its own. You don't have to be watching closely to see it. The file name rewrites itself. Cycle complete, archived by O. There is no follow-up, no press release, no knock at the door. Just a quiet motel bathroom, fog on the mirror, and the spiral, still turning.